Hi, welcome to Cook with Joy, and I hope this is becoming your favorite cooking show. It's mine. This is a special holiday edition because Halloween is coming up. And a lot of times when we think about Halloween, we think about sugary foods and how do we keep them away from our kids and too much partying, too many sweets. But one thing that I like to think about is how can I get really good food into kids so that they're not going to eat the junk that I don't want them to eat. So today we're going to make some delicious chili and cornbread, gluten-free of course, and everything that we make on Cook with Joy usually is vegan and gluten-free. So when you think about chili, you probably think about like chili at the diner where they put tons of grease and tons of salt in it and some kind of meat and all of that. I started making chili for my daughter's basketball team when she was in high school. And what I realized is that I could use things like canned beans. You can use them, dried as well. It's going to be a little bit more affordable, but it takes a little bit more time. So I use canned beans. I use mushrooms. Instead of meat, it gives you the same texture, but mushrooms are full of vitamin D, they're full of chromium, just so many things that are great for you and for your kids for regulating blood sugar and just getting more antioxidants into your life. We're also going to use onions. This is going to give texture as well as quercetin, which is fantastic antioxidant, really great for young athletes. We're going to use some garlic because it is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful addition to anything, plus it makes everything taste great. And then we've got a lot of spices that we're going to use, some chili powders, some different types of chili powder, and every chili has a different set of antioxidants. Now the capsaicin that's in chilies is what gives it that hot flush feeling, but it's also what helps us to regulate blood sugar, blood pressure, etc., etc. So we're going to use lots of chili, and then we're going to make cornbread. Now you could do a recipe. In fact, I have a great recipe out of a cookbook I'll show you, but I discovered this at a local store, and it's a cornbread and muffin mix, gluten-free, so easy. It's non-dairy. It says to add eggs, but instead of adding eggs, I'm going to use an egg replacer. You could use eggs if you want, but I'm not going to. So this is going to be really easy. It's going to go in at about the same time that I start the chili, so it's all going to come out together. But normally I'd get the cornbread ready and I'd put it in the oven so it'd be ready when the chili's done. But I think that you can follow the really simple directions on the back, so I'm not even going to bother making the cornbread today. But if you're following along, make the cornbread first, and if you don't use this mix, there's one from Trader Joe's that you could use. There's one in some different cookbooks, and you can also find one online. So that's the cornbread. But today we're going to focus on the chili. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to saute some onions, and I like to use yellow onions, and I also like to cut them into these thinner slices, not chunks, because I like the texture, but you might like the chunks, so it's up to you really. And you're going to get a whole onion going. That's what's really going to add the flavor, because we're not using animal products, we're not using any meat, so we want to really load it up with onions and garlic, so we get the flavor that maybe using some meat might give it. I'm also going to use a variety of mushrooms, and you've heard me talk about mushrooms before. We're using two different kinds of mushrooms today because each one of them has a different set of antioxidants. We're going to use these creminis, and notice I'm cutting them in chunks because this is going to replicate the feeling of having pieces of meat. And even if you haven't been a meat eater, we're kind of used to having texture in chili. It's never a puree. And it's interesting, I flew in here the other day and I stopped at a little bar at the airport and ordered some chili because I thought it would be the most innocuous thing on the menu, and it was so full of salt that I really couldn't even eat it. And so this hopefully is going to be an antidote for you for whatever chili you've been eating. So we're going to get these all cut up, and then we're going to add a little bit of garlic. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cook this all in one pot, partly because I'm lazy. So we're going to use just one pot so I don't have to wash a bunch of different dishes. And a little trick that I like to teach you, and I probably taught you this before, is let's use veggie broth instead of oil. So this happens to be a low sodium veggie broth, and for me that's important, and I've told you this before, but remember that when you look at the back, you want the milligrams of sodium to match the number of calories. Now in broth and in condiments, that's a little bit harder to do. For example, this has 140 milligrams of sodium versus 20 calories, but in the end it's all going to even out because I'm not going to add any more salt to this mixture. So we're going to add just a little bit of the veggie broth in the bottom, and we're going to get the onions going. And what I want to do is I want the onions to sweat a little bit before I add anything else to it. So let's get that started. Okay, so then we're going to add the mushrooms, and as I showed you, I've got to cut them in quarters, so they're going to give it a really nice texture, which I'm going to love. Okay, so while that's getting nice and soft, the mushrooms are going to get soft, I'm going to open up the cans of tomatoes. Now, could you use fresh tomatoes? Maybe, but I think that canned tomatoes actually give it a better flavor, and I like to use a variety of whole tomatoes and some crushed tomatoes because I like the texture of the whole tomatoes. Now you got to get your hand in there and squish it up, and I'll show you that in just a second. But first, I want to show you a couple of little differences about tomatoes. Interestingly enough, when you get Italian made tomatoes, Italian grown tomatoes and canned tomatoes in Italy, they're very low in sodium because the Italians don't add salt to the tomatoes. Now, all vegetables have some sodium in them naturally. That's just how all vegetables are. But here in America, I don't know what it is. We have this craving for salt. So here, this is just a regular can of tomatoes that I got. They're organic, which is great, but 290 milligrams of sodium, and that's just more than we really need to have. You want to have about the same number of milligrams of sodium as you have calories in a day. So if you're eating 2,000 calories, no more than 2,000 milligrams. Here we've got the Trader Joe's unsalted version, and even unsalted, you see that there's some sodium still in the tomato. But we're going to use a little bit of a variety of all of them. I'm not going to use the high sodium ones, but we'll use the other ones. What's good about canned tomatoes is that they've found that actually cooking tomatoes brings out the lycopene, and lycopene is what gives it the red color, and it's also what gives us the protective characteristics of preventing skin cancer and prostate cancer. I love tomatoes, and they found that even ketchup is high in lycopene, and I heard that under the Reagan administration that ketchup was counted as a vegetable for school lunches, if you can believe that. But I guess because it is high in lycopene, that kind of does make sense a little bit. So I'm going to get these ready to go, and there's a lot of opening of cans in my recipe for chili. And when I used to do this for my daughter's school, it was just so funny because the biggest part of making the food was opening up all the cans. Now, as I said, you could make your own tomatoes, you could can them, you could use fresh. Same thing's true with the beans. You could make your own from scratch, but it's a little bit easier to just open up a can. Now, where I live, I can get these in Tetra Paks, which I actually prefer. Most cans these days that are sold with organic products are BPA free. They're, the lining of it, so they're not as harmful as they used to be, but I prefer to use the Tetra Paks. I'm using a variety of beans today. I've got pinto, I've got black, and I've got great northern beans, and I've also got dark red kidney beans. And I'm using all 4 varieties for a couple of reasons, like I always say. One is just because they look really pretty when you've got 4 different colors, and we want to make our food be pretty as well as taste great, because that's what makes people want to eat it. Number 2, the wide variety of colors means what? A wide variety of antioxidants.
Wide variety of antioxidants.
A wide variety of antioxidants. That's right. And the great thing about beans is that they're really high in protein. In fact, they rival any animal product, and they also give you fiber, which helps to lower your blood pressure and your cholesterol levels, and they're full of folate, so it's just a wonderful, wonderful addition. You should eat some beans every day if possible.
What's a folate?
What's a folate? Well, folate is very, very important. It's a B vitamin, and it's very important in so many functions. Derek, I think you know that as an athlete. Really important for B vitamins. The higher you can jump, the faster you can run, all has to do with the level of B vitamins in your body. And we can talk about that on another show, but let's get these beans and tomatoes added to the soup. Okay, so I just dumped everything into the pot. The tomatoes, the beans, all of that. The only thing that you have to do besides dumping them in is if you use these whole tomatoes, you gotta squish them up. So you can either put your hand, see, I put my hand in there and it didn't get it all off yet, but you wanna squish the tomatoes up so that they're not whole tomatoes in the chili, because that would be gross. So you have to squish them up a little bit, but the next part is adding the spices. And this is where you get to get creative. You can add any kinds of chilies that you want, or you can be like me and be a cheater and get Carol Shelby's chili kit. I love this stuff because they mix cumin and the chilies and everything together. I don't have to do any guesswork. I use some of my own chilies, but I'm mostly going to use their stuff. So now I'm just going to use this kit. This is kind of high in sodium because they give you this great big salt packet and corn flour to make it thicker, and the corn flour has added salt to it. So I don't use any of that. I just use the chili powder that's already been mixed, and it's way better than I've ever been able to duplicate. So I just figure why mess with it if it's already perfect. So let's just open this up. Let me just open this up without cutting my hand off. So let's just dump this in. So much easier than figuring out how much of chili ancho and this chili that I need and that chili I need. Now this one's really spicy. Derek, do you like spicy? Because I know you're going to eat some of this.
Love it.
You do? Okay. All right. So I'm going to add this really spicy stuff, and I'm using a scissors. So it came off much easier. I didn't take off any fingers. And then let's stir that all up together. And my final secret ingredient to this is going to be, wait for it, you're going to love this, Derek, beer. Now, I don't drink beer normally, but beer in chili, just, I don't know, it tastes great. And the alcohol burns off, so you're not like getting drunk while you're having a bowl of chili. But it really adds to the flavor. You're bummed about that? Yeah, well, you can have a beer on the side if you want to. We didn't serve that at the games. That didn't go over too well. So we're just going to add that, and it's going to give it a great flavor. And all I'm going to do now is put the cover on, wait for the cornbread to be ready, and that's it. I've got this great Halloween meal. Cornbread and chili. I mean, what could be better? Now, if you want to chop up some onion and put it on the top, maybe you want to put some faux cheese on it to make it look a little bit fancier, maybe some green onions. But really, that's it. And how long did that take me, Derek? Like, I don't know.
5 minutes.
Oh, it took way longer than 5 minutes, but not long at all. You know, I don't really time how long it takes to cook because there's nothing in there besides the onions and the mushrooms that had to get cooked. So I just kind of leave it on until it's time for dinner. The cornbread's done. That's it. So I'm going to show you what it looks like though, because it's really pretty. And there it is. Look at how beautiful all the colors, the different beans, the mushrooms, the tomatoes. It's great. If you wanted even more color and more nutrition, you could stir some kale in at the last minute. I've used spinach in the past. That's been really great. Arugula gives a little bit of a bite. You might want to put some onions over the top. But there you have it, a beautiful, beautiful Halloween dinner. And I just can't wait to hear what you think about it. Let me know, and stay tuned next week. We've got a surprise for you with Cook with Joy.